I shouldn't have eaten that guacamole, I guess. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Phantom Fandom. Now, this is my new YouTube channel, and I'm just going to basically be reviewing music primarily. I might review other forms of media in the future, like certain movies, certain anime, TV shows, but for now, I'll focus on the one passion that I feel semi-qualified to talk about, and that's a generous statement. My very first review will be an album review of Rich Brian's The Sailor. Now, I've always been a fan of Rich Brian, even from the beginning when he was just a meme, back when he was Rich Chigga. I thought his voice and flow had a lot of potential, despite him, just releasing that joke song. And I was a fan of his first album, Amen. It was called Amen. I was a big fan of that album, but he had a lot of ways to go in terms of his maturity. The production was all there, the flows were all there, of course, but it seemed like a bit single-minded with all the sex and what he feels rap music should be about. Of course, there are exceptions here and there. And so coming into this album, The Sailor, I had really high expectations because of the first two singles that were dropped. Yellow, which is a crazy change in tone, in musicality and approach, as well as the song Kids, which, when I first heard the single, I was just astounded at how he did this long, single verse covering a bunch of different topics, and to me it sounded like it was going to be the outro of the album. It's not. We'll get into that. So yeah, I had really high hopes, and so what I can say about this album is parts of it have matured. The music, Brian's voice in a lot of places have really matured and changed. He's doing quite a few different things with his voice, which is super interesting, and I'm glad to hear that, because while his deep, specific flow that he was doing is great, it's cool to see him singing a lot. It's cool to see him switching up his flows and his voice. Now, that aside, I'm not sure 100% that the lyricism is quite matured yet. Yes, he covers a few topics that are, significant in the landscape of hip-hop, and Asian identity, but I don't know if he takes it far enough to really call it maturity. Overall, the production is amazing, and I expected the production to be amazing because the first album had amazing production. Straight out of the gate with the opening track, The Sailor, the production is really cool. I love how the outro of the track kind of transitions into guitar chords with layered vocals, but I feel like lyrically it doesn't do enough as an intro track. It does mention a few thematic points, such as relationships with girls, his kind of status as a rapper, but I don't think it really takes it far enough, and also so many of the lyrics, I was noticing bad lyrics more so than I was noticing good lyrics. Like, this ain't Trader Joe's, you paying for my verses with 5 10s. And then all the sex stuff. Woke up with a bitch, we didn't have a conversation, man, she just creamed on my dick. I thought there was a cool line where he said, but she didn't listen, we was on the devil's lettuce rap. So of course the devil's lettuce meaning marijuana, but because he is, he's from Asia, a lot of Asians are big on lettuce raps, of taking lettuce, filling it with meat and other delicious foods. I'm big on that too, and so I thought it was a nice little shift in the normal devil's lettuce metaphor. And then right away we go into Ra-Pa-Pa-Pa, which is basically a song about sex. And, for the most part, I actually really like how this song goes. The production is amazing. It has this little nice guitar riff that gets repeated. There is one lyric in the song that is awful, but I'll talk about the good ones first. I think the chorus actually is really effective. While, it's technically pretty basic in terms of the lyricism, he kind of constructs it cleverly where every line ends with a kind of onomatopoeia. And then the second half of the verse is kind of a singy-song thing, and it works pretty well. The third verse has both my favorite and worst lyrics. My favorite lyrics is a nice extended metaphor where he says, I got protection, I need self-defense. Pull out my weapon and empty the clip. Pop, pop, pa, that's 3 of my kids. Pop, pop, pa, my son and my twins. It's pretty cool. People have compared their penis to a weapon before. But I kind of like how he extends it, and the onomatopoeia of the pop pod, and there's 3 of my kids there now. It makes it a bit more interesting. But in the same verse, he also says, "Suck on her nipples like bon appetit," which you could have said bon appetit, like T-E-A-T. So I don't really know why he went for the much more dumb line here. This is kind of where a main issue I have with the album comes in. The sequencing is really weird. We go from the sex song to the outro of the sex song, which is a completely unrelated outro by RZA of Wu-Tang Clan. And while the outro production is cool because it kind of has the same melodic elements as the rest of the song, and RZA is just talking some RZA shit, but I don't understand why it's at the end of this sex song, and then this transitions into Yellow, which is a super great song about Asian identity and, the ideas of death and such. That was weird to me. And then also, Kids, like I mentioned earlier, sounds 100% like an album outro because he's talking about all the different topics on the album. The production sounds victorious and reflective. But it's not the outro. It comes right after Yellow and then continues with the album. And he even says, "Glad you're sitting through the credits, man. This is my story." So it's like, okay, this should be the ending credits. And then there's a song Curious that works pretty well as a reflective outro, but that's still not even the last song. It's the second to last song. The song Where Does the Time Go? I don't think is that good of a outro song thematically, because it's just about, their lovers, he and Joji, which it's not a bad song, it's just a weird placement, I feel. So yeah, one of my favorite songs is Yellow, which was the first single, and I love it because it really shows that Brian is evolving musically. He's evolving his voice, his vocal versatility, and it's a genuinely beautiful song. He's talking about a lot of things here, like mortality, Asian identity, self-image. There's a key change in here that's super beautiful, and just overall the songwriting is really great because it's not just a beat and him rapping. It's he constructed a song where he sings and it builds and then it slows down again, and there's a string outro that's just genuinely great, genuinely beautiful, well put together. And then he has a very aggressive rap verse that comes in, and it really tugs at the heartstrings. It's a very powerful performance. The point being, he talks about how he did it with no citizenship, and so I really think that's great, especially for he has a huge Asian fan base, and I think it's great, that he can act as an icon for these Asian individuals who want to do not just rap but anything that they want to do. And he's been involved with this very American genre of music without being a citizen, and even though he's felt like an outsider, he's been able to establish himself. I think it's really powerful how he's talking about his mortality and kind of where music sits on that scale of this balancing act between life and death. What is making it worth it for him? What is helping him establish his identity? And like I mentioned earlier, Kids is also a great song. The beat is great, has a lot of brass instruments that really add to this victorious feel, and talks about a lot of things: family, Asian pride, his musical direction and evolution, not being complacent with a certain level of success, and mentions his label, 88 Rising. And I think the key thematic piece here is, started off as the sailor, look at me now, I'm the captain. Similarly, I used to be the kid, now the kids want to be me. I think it's, a lot of this album has to do with him being lost or feeling like just kind of like a wandering person, wondering what his purpose is. And now he's feeling like he's commanding his life, his musical direction, and he feels like a good enough role model for the kids too. And then my favorite song on this album is Drive Safe, which is a beautiful piece that really exemplifies his growth as a songwriter and a singer. It's all sentimental, it's all nostalgic, And I love how the verses with the production build into the chorus, and then the chorus is really lush and beautiful, and then it kind of gets calm again for the verse again. Curious is a song where it's kind of talking about his attempts at wooing women, and that's cool and all, but he says things like, I asked why she being cold to me, and she said she don't like guys like me. Oh, you mean smart and funny and has a big dick? Like, if you're going to be doing this type of song or having these types of responses, you kind of have to be slicker about it. You know, if you're going to say you have a big dick, at least use a metaphor. There are some songs that I think work really well. No Worries is a great song, and the production is a laid-back, flute-based beat. That's how it starts, and it talks about his different anxieties and emotional pain. And I really sympathize with that because I struggle with similar issues, such as, I'm bad at socializing, that's what homeschool did to me. It also got me money and a whole new identity. So fuck a prom night, I drive a limo to a bakery. And this is something I've always had an issue with, of I should be spending more time going out and doing things with different people, but I had to become complacent with the fact that I'm okay with just doing my own thing and going where I want to go, even if it's not the flashiest lifestyle. And also the song transitions and speeds up, and it has a super great beat switch. And I feel like thematically this parallels Brian's attempt to get himself out of this emotional funk, this antisocial state, and kind of go out and do things to distract him from the issues of the past or even what he's thinking about right now. And then my other favorite song on the album is called Slow Down Turbo, and it's perfectly exemplifies the thematicism of the sailor. The idea is he compares himself to a sailor who spends a bulk of his time traveling from different places, meeting different people, just as Brian has moved from Indonesia to pursue this American genre of music. As he said in interviews before, the American way of life is a lot faster and crazier than back in Indonesia. So the title of the song can be seen as his mind telling him to slow down turbo, to slow down and getting involved with the new lifestyle. And all of this is personified musically because the beat switches up multiple times. It keeps getting faster, and that's the best part of it, in my opinion. Because like the first verse is a smooth R&B type track and kind of reminds me of a Drake song. And then Bekon, who you would recognize as having different vocal interludes on Kendrick Lamar's Damn, has a bridge that moves the first beat to a second faster beat with an 808 drum and a very quickly moving synth line. Brian also delivers this gun-like flow to match the energy of the track, which both they speed up in a sliding manner. It gets progressively faster. And then at this point, the third part of the beat comes, where even though the beat is even faster, the synth is much, much faster than it was, Brian actually slows his flow down, kind of to a halftime type thing. And it's such an amazing contrast and defiance of the expectations, and it works super well thematically too. And then once again, the song ends with a slowed vocal outro by Bekon, I think fully realizing Brian to slow down turbo. But yeah, like there's so many these other songs that he didn't take far enough thematically or lyrically for me, such as Where Does the Time Go, 100 Degrees. It doesn't do much for me, though it is interesting that even though it seems like just kind of a song about Brian chilling with women in the summertime, there's this kind of underlying presence of a climate change statement. It seems to be a dig at the people who don't believe in climate change being an issue. So, if that's part of it, that's a bit cooler, but just sonically, it doesn't do a whole lot for me. I don't look at the camera enough. And also, Confetti is the worst song on the album, one of the most annoying hooks I've heard in a while. I at least appreciate how high energy the production is, but it's just so obnoxious, and I skip it every time now. So yeah, that's where I am with that. Some amazing songs on here thematically. He really stepped up his songwriting skills. He varied up his flows, his voice. I think it's gonna rain. Again, the sequencing is weird, and I think his lyricism needs a bit more of maturity. But yeah, this album's a great listen. Even if you don't pay attention to the lyrics, his flows and the production are enough to really pull you in. But it's also worth paying attention to some of the grander songs on the album, like Yellow, Slow Down Turbo, and the more lyrical stuff like Kids. So yeah, that was my first album review. It was a bit sloppy because I'm not used to this yet, but hopefully things come through better in the editing portion. Thank you, me. And look forward to my next video, which should be a review of the new Everglow song, whatever it's called. Alright, this has been Phantom Fandom. I'm Ray, and I want to thank you all for listening. So long.